Hello, I'm Francine Charles, media practitioner and communications consultant. This presentation will be looking at meaningful media coverage of the CARICOM single market and economy, or the CSME. Our main objectives today will be looking and exploring effective approaches for crafting messages on the regional integration process. We'll also explore a little bit the use of social media now in ensuring an expanded and younger audience. And of course, we will identify where media practitioners can get help and support in their efforts at CSME coverage. There are two critical areas that I think we need to talk about contextually when we're looking at the CSME. And one is that CARICOM is really the main regional umbrella for the integration process, within which CSME fits. There's a unit specifically geared towards looking at those areas. So it's important as media practitioners to remember that not all CARICOM stories are CSME stories, and that's why it's going to be so important for you to look at the rest of the video to understand from our other experts exactly which areas fall under CSME. And of course, another critical one which I think we'll grapple with as media practitioners for eternity, and that is the role of the media in the developmental process. We know that media is a business, everyday functioning business. We know it's not a PR unit, but in the center of it, we will always be a major player in any critical developmental process. And at this juncture, CSME is undoubtedly a driver and a driving force for economic and individual prosperity, both at macro levels, which is at the regional level, the national levels, and of course at the individual levels. So let's jump in now to looking at the call for the involvement of the media. And I always find it very interesting because there's a tendency for media practitioners to look at where is the information coming from? Why are the experts not probably giving us enough? And the Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister, Baldwin Spencer, he was a former Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister, defended the regional integration movement and appealed to regional broadcasters to play a meaningful role in educating the Caribbean population about the achievements of the 40-year-old institution at the time. He made the point, we hear very little about how a private sector business operating in the CSME has been able to benefit from the regimes, or how an artisan has been able to move through the region as a skilled national, or even how successful regional bodies like CXC, the Caribbean Examination Council, or CARDI, which is the Caribbean Agricultural Research and Development Institute, have been implementing their mandates and impacting the people of the region. He indicated, that is why I am of the opinion that broadcasters are indeed and should be the champions of the regional integration message. So that provides an important context for looking at what is the role of the media. And what I want to posit this today in this presentation is that media practitioners must grapple with the fact that the CSME is an important ideal for both big and small nations. It has become a critical component for us, even in competition with the outside world, even in negotiation with the outside world, but more individually for the ability for our Caribbean nationals to find markets, to find jobs, to find homes, even, as I always make a little quip, to find our marriage partners. And so as a result of that, the CSME cannot be ignored as just another story. The role of the media must be both reactive and proactive to be truly effective in covering CSME. So therefore, it is not just what the stories that are being brought to us. It is not just the press releases or media releases that we get on a day. It has to be an exploration of what exactly is the importance of CSME, why should we cover it, what should we cover about it, and who needs to know about it. And so that's an important context as a media person, that we cannot just be reactive. We cannot just cover a CSME story when something big arises. It has to be an ongoing process that helps persons, the small farmer, the business person, the young student just coming out of university, to understand what are my rights and my benefits. For some people, and this is so critical, the media is their only avenue, their only real avenue for receiving and understanding information in a way that they truly can. In a way, the media will provide, and we should provide, a bridge between the technical work that is being done at the CSME level and helping the public to truly understand how they can make the best of all these rights and these benefits that are being provided. So let's look now at some practical approaches to our coverage of CSME. And at this point, we're working with practical, everyday opportunities. I'm not sending you out to do an investigative piece. I'm not sending you out to travel the waters in search of a story. Every day, almost every day, CARICOM, the CARICOM Secretariat, and the CSME unit are sending out media releases. Now, I must say that there was a time when a media release could not be put out just as it was. Those were what some people would say the good old days. Now we see it more and more. Press releases come in, and exactly as they are put out, they are seen in the newspaper or read on the television news. What we want to do is to go beyond that, because what you're finding in most cases is that we are providing our public with information, but really and truly the education that helps them to understand that is missing. And so there must be greater coverage, expanded coverage, and what I would call more effective or everyday, simple coverage. Now you go onto the CARICOM website, caricom.org, and of course you will find the area where it talks about media releases that are available, community news. When you go in there and you get a media release, or it lands on your desk, it is not just what is said. We want to do a number of things. We want to look at what's the real story in this media release. And when you do this exercise, you will find it very interesting. Choose any release on the CARICOM site and look for what is the main story, which is not always, in the case of the CSME unit, that's putting out the information as they have it. From a media standpoint, you may want to look a little deeper to see what's really the headline story here. Then you also want to look at what are the follow-up stories, so that the release is not dead after one issue. You look and you say, are there follow-up stories? For example, a story that talks about the training of young people in the area of business and understanding their CSME rights. You then look at what has been the experience of these young people since then. What's the importance or the help that this will do to the national economy or for their own individual lives? Maybe there's a follow-up human interest story in talking to one of those young people. There may also be a further expansion of the story as to how others can make benefit of the seminars through an interview with a CARICOM or CSME official. Is there a vox pop in here? Do people even know what's happening when it comes to business opportunities in other countries? Do we go out just outside of our media house into the city and ask a few people, do you understand what's happening as it relates to the rights of establishment or the right of free movement? And even further, is there a Caribbean story to tell? Is there a defining story in here? The fact that our forefathers, for example, used to ply trade between the islands much easier. Now, are there things that are considered hindrances? And how has the CSME structure and legal framework helped to make sure that we go forward almost in a way better than our forefathers did? And so there's stories in there. And so we recap that. With a media release, you go through it to look, what is the main story in here? What is really the true and real story that will be truly interesting to our audience and to our target groups? Secondly, is there a follow-up story here? Thirdly, is there a human interest or a vox pop that then brings in the common touch, the everyday man? And of course, is there a defining story in here that we can tell, especially when it comes to television and features can be produced. Then for those who are maybe not in the newsroom or have more opportunity to report, to produce, maybe you're a DJ or a radio announcer, or you're involved in film production, there's so much that we can do. And let's go now to what I call going beyond the media release part 2. It's important, and I think this is how we become relevant as media people, to identify a social group in your country that would really benefit from understanding the CSME and cover CSME from their perspective. So for example, young people who say that they are unemployed, they've left university, but they're an unemployed group. What stories can we tell? What interviews can we do with members of the CSME unit, or even members within our own countries within the national framework that work on CSME? How can we provide guidance for this group? How can we tell their story? Can we follow them as they try to get their skills certificate, or even their vocational qualifications that allows them to find a job in another country? How easy is it to find a job? What are the avenues for finding what's happening in the Caribbean? These are excellent stories that we can tell. Secondly, is there an interest group that you are already involved with? Sports clubs or business associations, and write stories with their angle in mind. For example, if you're involved in the arts community, is there a story that you can tell from their angle? What would they be interested in understanding as artists trying to find new markets in the Caribbean, trying to find, how do I really get a CARICOM skills certificate? Am I qualified to get one? And these are stories that you can tell as media practitioners that will help the interest group that you're already involved with. And so you're doing a service, but you're also, I think, really contributing to a significant aspect of our national and regional life. Then a third, build your CSME coverage around your everyday job. What we've heard are people saying, well, you know, CSME is not really an exciting topic. It's not really a sexy topic. I'm a DJ on a radio station. CSME is really very technical information. I challenge that. We have done and we've looked at some opportunities, for example, for a DJ on a radio station to do a couple of interviews, bring in people, artists, people who have been benefited already from CARICOM skilled certificates, people who are already sending their businesses into other countries because of the CSME, and interview them, call them, have a very light conversation, real conversations with them, and maybe dedicate your hour to Caribbean music. So you say, okay, this is CSME Day, and we're going to talk about how CSME can work for us, how CSME can benefit us, and talk to the everyday man. If, for example, you do a program either on radio or TV that involves forums, put together a forum, call the CSME unit, call your relevant ministries within your countries and say, can we talk about CSME? But we don't want to talk about it in a very technical way. We want to talk about it in an everyday language that people can understand and really get to the meat of the matter. And so let's recap. Look for a social group in your country that will really benefit from understanding their rights and cover from their perspective. If you're already involved with a group, for some reason you're involved in sports or some other area of activity, consider what is the angle that they would need to understand the CSME and do some stories, do some work in that area. And third, use your everyday job. So it's not about going beyond what you do and the issues of time, etc. But what are you already doing? And how can CSME fit in there? If I'm a human interest writer, how does it fit in? If I'm a DJ, how does it fit in? If I'm a news reporter, how does it fit in? A couple of critical stylistic guidelines that we want to look at when you're covering CSME, because by no means is this the easiest of topics, but of course are critical and interesting when you really get into it. It's really important. The CSME unit, and you'll find it in the media releases, tend to use a lot of acronyms because there's just so much work that they've been doing and so many structures and frameworks that they've created. It's important as media practitioners that we explain those acronyms and that we do not overuse them in our stories, so that in a way it begins to make people, it dullens the senses of our readers or of our listeners. So explain what is the acronym. Don't just say, for example, that the CET is the Common External Tariff, but explain a little bit, as short as you can, what does that really mean? It is so important as media practitioners that we help to translate the technical stuff by using simple and everyday language. It is critical. Try our best. We need to try our best to ensure that we do not just regurgitate what we've been given, but try to understand it, seek clarification ourselves before writing, because if we don't understand what we've written, it is most possible, probable even, that our readers or our listeners have no clue what we've just said or what we have just written. So seek clarification on the points and use simple language.
Thank you for viewing our series of videos on the CSME for media practitioners. For up-to-date information, log on to www.csmeonline.org.